You're listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Okay, we're here with another bonus episode. Why? Because we have 5 Fridays this month. Actually, this is a little out of order, though, because this is not the 5th Friday. This is the 4th Friday of the month, but I wanted it to release on this day because it's the day after Thanksgiving. And I was like, well, it's basically a holiday, even though I think Black Friday, the whole concept of Black Friday is dumb. And for us to call it a holiday is stupid.
It's on a holiday weekend. A lot of people get the whole 4 days off.
So I figured, why not do something fun and interesting today and then save our expert for a more serious professional day. So we're talking about outrageous openness, which we've made mention of many times.
And I've recommended this book to so many clients.
Almost all of them over the years.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So this is a tried and true favorite of ours.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get pretty deep. We're gonna actually read you some parts of it. So you're gonna get to experience it a little bit.
Before we dive into all of the things that we've kind of outlined that we want to talk about, I just want to give you a little overview of what outrageous openness is. And it's a book, but it's actually a collection of what used to be newspaper stories, like really short little newspaper articles by a woman named Tosha Silver, who for a few years was an sort of like astrological columnist for the San Francisco Examiner. And Tosha.
I think it's Tosha.
I think people say it wrong. And so I get it confused. Sometimes it's Tosha. She is really funny and she's very kooky, and she drops all sorts of different like religious references and astrological references in this, but it's still super accessible. She just is a lover of just all things spiritual and woo-woo, and it's fun.
Yeah, and I am not super well versed in astrology and all the different signs, and she'll drop some of those throughout the book, but you don't need to understand that.
That's not the point of this book.
Message. I don't understand it all, that's for sure. And it's just as powerful.
The subtitle is Letting the Divine Take the Lead. So we kind of wrote down a little section from the introduction that I think does a good job of describing sort of
what she's talking about when she says outrageous openness.
The mission statement of the book, so to speak.
Yeah. So in the intro, she says, I know without a doubt that a force of love exists that can guide, help, and interact with each of us in the most intimate and practical way, no matter the conditions, if only we know how to invite it in. And that's what outrageous openness is. It's learning how to invite that source in.
And you can call it source, you can call it the divine, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it love, you can call it life itself.
She calls it all kinds of things too. She calls it God, she calls it source, she calls it the divine.
She uses interchangeable words all the time because in her estimation and in ours too, we're all talking about the same thing. Yep. So it doesn't really matter what you call it or precisely what exactly you think it is, because it's kind of the same regardless of what our minds label it as. And it's about turning over your stress and your worry and your kind of like human-based, ego-based desire to force things to work out or
to be a control freak in your life
or to understand things even when you don't understand them, to turn it over to a source that's more omnipotent and powerful than you, and just trusting that if you let the divine take the lead, as she says, things will work out so much better for you in the long run, and that you'll have so much more fun and ease and joy, and you'll be sort of co-creating as opposed to just either waiting for things to happen to you and feeling like a victim, or trying to be the arbiter of the universe and forcing everything to happen.
Yep. Side note, if you listened to Rachel's interview with Francisca a few weeks ago about trusting your intuition and trusting the signs, and you want to know, how do I do that?
Like a magical scavenger hunt.
Yeah. Then this book is
really great at that.
Is going to guide you along that way for sure.
So she wrote this book to help answer some really common questions that she perpetually saw over and over and over again over the course of 25 years and about 30,000 astrological readings that she gave to various people, which is a ton.
That's crazy.
So some of the most common questions she would or themes she would see arising from people is, how do I stop worrying? How can I know that things will work out? How can I feel safe? Why do I feel so alone? And who am I really? I mean,
those are it, right?
Those are the
human questions.
Those are like the core questions.
We're all asking those questions.
So what I love about this book is that it's so short. It's about 70. I counted. I literally went through and I counted. There are 68 different stories in this book, but they're each so short. And we only could pick 6 to share with you. And even that, I think, is probably too many, but we just couldn't narrow it down any further. So what we're going to do is we're going to alternate. We're going to go through and read you some of these stories and talk about why we picked these and why we love them. And I really hope that you guys will read the whole thing, because it was so hard to only sort of pick less than 10% of this book to highlight for you. And there's this whole other 90% I really wanted you to share with us. And I just couldn't. So.
Well, and the beauty of the format of this is you can read a story here or there, one before bed.
Yeah.
You can do this very piecemeal, and each one is so inspiring and
funny usually.
Yeah, really light and warm.
And then we'll share a few of our own experiences with practicing outrageous openness, just so that you know that we do this all the time and that we're not just preaching. We practice this, and in funny and often silly and you would seemingly inconsequential ways. But that, to me, I almost struggled to come up with examples, because I feel that I do this all the time. And so it's just become second nature, and I'm not even paying attention to it anymore. It just happens.
Right. It's almost constant. So trying to pick things out.
So, okay.
It's challenging.
I'm going to start with a story called Trying to Function Without God. When I was in 9th grade, my friends and I played a certain game for months on end. No matter what someone said, we just added the words during sex, such as, she loves to eat anchovy pizza during sex, or he always forgets to do his math homework during sex. For whatever reason, this never failed to send us into gales of hysteria, but then we were 14. Now I find myself in a new version. Have you noticed how some people will rush to discourage a certain goal, or at least let you know how futile, exhausting, or expensive your attempt will be before you even start? So in my revised game, I always take their words and add without God, as in, it's impossible to find the right job in this economy without God, or you'll never be able to find parking there without God. I can't tell you how well this works. I happened to turn on NPR one day during a mind-boggling interview with an efficiency expert. He'd written a book on procrastination with 44 critical steps to be followed in his Act for Success plan. I was soon giggling so hard I had to pull the car over at the corner of Clay and Divisadero just to be safe. Even the poor interviewer sounded flummoxed. He asked, "So you're telling our listeners they must follow all 44 steps?" "Absolutely. Every single one," the expert intoned, "in the proper order, otherwise it will not work." And he began to fire off the list again. My head was spinning like a bad carnival ride. "Well," said the interviewer, "to be honest, that's all a bit daunting. Isn't there a simpler way for people to begin?" "No," said the expert gravely. "As a master, I devised this plan scientifically. And of course, if people are confused, they should take my seminar." Well, of course.
Of course.
Wiping away tears of laughter, all I could think was, yep, he's a master of how to overcome procrastination without God. I remembered how life was indeed a weary road before I let the divine lead the way. I ran from one self-styled master to the next with my problems. The combination of a delicate nervous system and a good dose of ADD made my life often derail. But at some indeterminate point, perhaps more from exhaustion than evolution, I pretty much gave God control. And though problems still come, solutions usually follow in fresh and novel ways. The other day, I met an interesting writer in a cafe. We started discussing the book proposal I'd been stuck on. She offered, well, I could help you do it. These usually take about 30 hours to create, and I charge $250 an hour. Are you kidding? I gasped, doing some quick calculations. That's over $7,000. Well, I do have a handy flexible payment plan, she said. Then I remembered, that's what a book proposal costs, without God. When I demurred and left, I sat in my car and invoked divine order with my full heart. If you wish this written, I cannot do this on my own. You know my limits, but the perfect route is already selected, so if this is your will, fling open the doors. If this is meant to be, please bring the right help. Within a month, a writer friend of mine in New Mexico serendipitously emailed me one of her own proposals. Hey, you popped into my mind tonight, she wrote. In case you're still working on that thing, just use mine like a map. You'll finish in no time. She was right.
Oh, man. I love this so much. I use this when I hear that kind of feedback. And I try to teach my clients this, and this is a hard one, right? Because if you haven't been used to trusting that God or spirit or the universe will step in and make the path easier, then you feel like you are the one who has to figure out, how am I going to pay for that book proposal? Or how am I going to get an apartment in this economy or whatever? And it's so exhausting.
Yep.
You
could just turn it over.
Yeah.
You could just say, if this is meant to be, it'll happen, and I'll just be open-minded, and I'm just going to keep living my life, and the right help will come. And if it does, it does. And if it doesn't, it wasn't the right thing.
Yep.
That is so reassuring if you can think of it like that.
I also love the idea of turning a 14-year-old, like a phrase that 14-year-olds find hilarious, and making it into a spiritual principle. I think that's just great.
But I think that's also the duality of life, right? That there's nothing too significant or... don't take yourself too seriously.
Right.
God doesn't take itself too seriously. Why should you?
Right.
Okay. Let's read the next one, which is the God box.
Oh, man. I love this
This is one of my favorite ones.
Okay. I grew up a perpetual worrier, perhaps from having a sensitive Pisces mother who always anticipated the next disaster, or from being an East Coast Jew. In any case, by the time I turned 25, I was literally making myself sick with fear. To survive myself, I had to change. One of the first techniques I learned was the God box. You simply write down your worries and pop them into some kind of a container, as simple or as elegant as you wish. Whenever a new worry comes up, into the box it goes. You don't even need a clear concept of God to do this. You could make the offering to your own highest wisdom, or to the force that keeps the birds aloft in the sky. Doesn't matter. Sounds simplistic, but honestly, it works. If the problem torments you again, you remember, it's in the box. It's done. You can also add as many other problems as you wish, because studies show that the mind recalibrates in 21 days, so try to reliably submit a particular worry for at least that long. During the period of offering, solutions often spontaneously arise. When the mind is no longer grasping for an answer, space opens. The box gives room for a divine plan, even in impossible messes. I first used the box when I was crazily looking for a new apartment one summer. Friends kept helpfully reminding me that the vacancy rate in the Bay Area was at an all-time low of 3%, and the odds of finding a decent, affordable place were next to nil. But the teacher who had suggested that the box insisted that odds and percentages didn't matter one whit. What matters was the offering. With a sense of bemused curiosity, I scrawled my first note and slipped it in. I am now being guided to the right apartment at the right time. It's already handled. Within a month, my veterinarian asked offhandedly as she checked my kitten for ear mites, "You still need a spot, right?" "I know one." She was right. 15 years later, I'm still there. After a while, you start trusting the process. You realize the details of the situation are irrelevant, since those will be revealed. What matters is offering the problem over with a sincere, consistent heart. The box is also a perfect complement to divine order, allowing you to have a sacred place to store your prayers and statements if you wish that. For some practical-minded people, having a concrete spot really helps. So what do you have to lose but anxiety?
I actually know plenty of people who've created God boxes after reading that. And it's so helpful. I think it's really important to have a tangible sometimes you just need a tangible way to feel like you're doing something.
Right.
Instead of just mentally offering it over and handing it over and letting go of control. You just put it in there and you're like, oh, Olivia Pope style, it's handled. Right. And this reminds me of the side chat we did in October about the acorn and the oak tree. I'll link to it. About time and how we just know so little about what's really going on here that it's so silly and often kind of egocentric for us to think that we understand the logistics and the kind of mysteries of how things get done and how things work out. And so when you think, oh, that won't happen because the odds are so small, it's sort of almost cute, I think, to the universe, because the universe doesn't go by odds. Like, if you're open and receptive, things can happen beyond your wildest dreams. But I think the point she makes here is that it's you trying to control and grasp that creates the resistance that doesn't allow it to come. You're taking up all the space with your grasping. It's that really great Rachel Naomi Remen quote where she says, the hand that grasps the feather creates the current that pushes it away. That's it.
Yep.
And so we're trying not to grasp anymore.
Right. The universe is a lot more powerful than odds and statistics. That's like child's play in its mind. The reason I like this idea of a box, too, of physically writing down your concerns and your worries and your challenges and putting it in this box is, to me, it feels like you're establishing a relationship with the universe. When it's just you in your head, it feels like, I don't know, am I just talking to myself here? And is this really working? But when you write something down and put it in the box, to me, it almost feels like a post box to the universe. It's like, here is my letter, here is my concern, I put it in this box, and then you respond. And it feels more like a two-way street. So I just personally feel like there's more energy there and there's more of a sense of trust because you take it, the worry from inside yourself and put it outside of yourself physically.
Yeah.
So there's power in that.
Right. It's easier to let it go. So, okay, here's another one. This one's called Volcano Chaser. It's hard
to pick a favorite, but I love this one.
God, I love this one. Okay. When I was 22 and new to San Francisco, I became friends with a writer named Steven. We hung out in the Bohemian Mission District with a pack of other artsy types, feeling at home for the first time in our lives. After a few months, Steven suddenly declared that he was leaving the city. He said he was ready to settle down in the countryside, find a mate, even have a kid. Man, did this sound suspect? Like having your favorite gay cousin announce that he was running off to join the Latter-day Saints or something. Then he admitted that though he loved the Bay, he was terrified of an earthquake. After spending months hunting the statistically safest place to move, he settled on rural Washington state. But you belong here, I protested. How can you leave? You panic even when you can't get a good burrito. He acknowledged that while he had no real pull to go, he was desperate for a safe home. He knew in astrology that Pluto was coming to his nadir, the bottom of his chart, soon. So he felt a major disaster could hit at any moment. You know, he said, shaking his head sadly, I just can't live on the San Andreas Fault anymore, wondering if my building will still be standing each night when I get home from work. I can still remember the day we all said goodbye in front of his studio. For good luck, and because this was the 80s, we smashed a bottle of cheap champagne on the fender of his peeling blue Dodge. And then he was gone. None of us heard a peep until 9 months later when Steven sheepishly phoned one day to say he was returning. What happened? I asked, elated. Well, darling, remember last May when Mount St. Helens blew for the first time since 1857? And you know that safe haven I'd spent so long scientifically picking? I moved to the town of Cougar, 11 miles away. I lost most of my clothes, books, even my 10-speed. Every square inch was packed with ash. I can still smell and taste it all 2 months later. You know, I'd kill right now for a burrito with extra cheese, guac, and salsa. I swear there's not a decent one in this whole friggin' state. Geez, I am so damn ready to come home. Steven returned to the mission by the end of the summer. We took him out to his favorite dive bar. To this day, he says he's glad it all happened. He never made a decision from fear again.
Oh, I love this story. I love the story because it shows that when you make decisions based on fear, you make terrible decisions.
You literally create your worst case scenario. Yes. That's what happens. You focus on fear, you literally energize it, you expand it, you create more of it, you literally end up chasing it down.
He was so focused on natural disaster that he ended up driving himself to the exact place where he could be most affected by a natural disaster.
Where a natural disaster had not occurred in 130 years.
That's a strong energy to bring that into
really powerful
into existence.
Right.
Wow. So if there has ever been a case for not making decisions based on fear and based purely on science, I think that's a pretty powerful example right there.
Right. So the point there is to go with what feels good, even if it doesn't statistically or logically make sense, because when you're feeling good, you're in a state of alignment, you're not operating from fear, and you're much safer. When you're operating from a place of fear, you're not nearly as safe because you're just going to become a magnet for all sorts of disasters, both natural and man-made. So it's so funny. God, I love that story so much. Anyway, okay. Continue. There's our fourth story now.
This story feels kind of related to me, which is perfect.
Yeah, I really like this one too. It's just different. It's more happy. It's not a disaster story, but it's about
similar
the same
principle.
Odds don't matter.
Yeah. Someone named Janine called wanting to know why she hadn't been able to find the kind of union she'd been seeking forever. She'd finally decided that though she loved San Francisco, she needed to move to a spot with better quote-unquote odds.
Right. No, not all the gay men, basically.
Every potential guy here, she moaned, was either married, gay, or both. I passionately assured her that this wasn't so, saying, it's not about numbers. It's about karma and vibration. You don't need 100 options. Unless you're secretly a Mormon, you only need one. But her mind was set. She was moving to the ultimate he-man Valhalla, Alaska.
Get them lumberjacks.
I was flummoxed. Do you actually want to live there? Silly, she replied. Absolutely not. I belong here. But the ratio of women to guys is like 85-1. I must go. I said she might spare herself a pricey and exhausting move just by using divine order. So she agreed for the next month to say, the perfect partner is already selected. He is arriving in the right way at the right time. I am so grateful to receive him. But she wanted to cover all her bases and continued to pack for the tundra. I kept insisting that if she sincerely invoked divine order, a relationship would come at the right time. She didn't have to hunt. She could draw the experience by feeling worthy to receive and following the leads that appeared. But she had to feel deserving. She didn't need to move somewhere she dreaded. I even told her about my friend Anna, who lived like a cloistered nun, but ended up falling madly in love with the visiting cable repair girl. But Janine was undeterred. By the end of the summer, she left, calling me from the airport for a tearful goodbye. By Halloween, the phone rang. Janine in Juneau,
Alaska.
Yeah. Hey, are you ready? She teased. Oh, geez, you already know what I'm going to say. I got here, and honestly, it was so completely ridiculous. Gorgeous place, but I so didn't belong. But I kept doing that divine order deal since, what the hell, I had already come. Then one night, this guy started talking to me in a cafe who was on vacation. Visiting, I interrupted. From here? Oh, yeah, Mama, you got it, she laughed. 12 blocks from my flat in the Mission. The most amazing person. We spent the last month running around Alaska together in total heaven. He jokes that maybe we needed to start off first with a pricey vacation. I'm moving back home tomorrow. Talk about odds, right?
Okay, so I have so many points that I love about that one. One is that this is a prime example of like what's meant for you can't miss you.
Yes.
You could literally move to like the middle of Alaska, like motivated by the exact wrong thing, but still end up being fine and ending up meeting the right person. So I think that should be a comfort to all of us that we don't have to know what we're doing because the universe is so powerful that, you know, if you miss your bus, there'll be infinite more buses until you finally notice your bus.
Or your bus will find you
in
wherever
Alaska,
you ended up going.
Right. So it's not impossible. There's no such thing as like bad odds because odds don't exist.
Right. Because the odds were in her favor that she would meet this guy
wherever.
Within 12 blocks, not even miles, blocks from where she lived.
People are going to ask, well, why didn't she ever meet him when she lived 12 blocks away? And so while I don't think that you can actually miss what's meant for you. I do think you can make it longer and harder than you need to by being attached to the outcome and by being super desperate and clingy and graspy. So I think what happened was that she finally let go. She was just doing the divine order thing, and she's like, you know what? If this is meant to work out, it will, but I'm not super worried about it. And that created the space to finally allow the person to come into her life. This is why there is an adage, and I know you guys know it and you've heard of it, that's like, when you finally stop looking for someone is when they show up. Or when you're happy being single is when you meet somebody. That's not a coincidence. That's this principle in action. It's when you stop being attached to the outcome and you stop trying to control and you stop trying to assume you know best about the timeline and how things should work out for you. And you just, sincerely enjoy your life and trust that things are going to work out is when, coincidentally or sort of counterintuitively, you create the space for that thing to come in.
Right.
And that's what she did.
Also, she was convinced that she wasn't going to meet her guy in the Bay Area.
Right.
She said, I know the odds. It's not going to happen
so
here.
That was creating a bunch of space and or lack of space and resistance.
In some way, even though she thought she was open, she wasn't really open because she was pretty convinced it's not going to happen.
She thought she was right.
So she became more open when she went to Alaska.
What a great example of the universe trolling her, too, and being like, you were wrong the whole time, and I'm going to make it so obvious how wrong you were, just to, sort of humble you.
I know. Such a good story.
Okay, so next story. This is the $700 penthouse. I'm a great believer in what some traditions would call conjuring a miracle, inviting divine intercession on just about any topic, big or small. People often tell me about situations so overwhelming and complex, their rational minds cannot begin to fathom a way out. Sometimes they're surrounded by friends and family who might even ratchet up their sense of powerlessness and despair. But over the years, I've seen that calling in a miracle can open doors that linear rationality never could. I mentioned earlier that I once spent 3 years in a bed with a rare failure of my endocrine system. Eventually, a gifted acupuncturist arrived who restored my health in 9 months. But that wasn't the only miracle. Once my health began returning, I needed a new apartment. While I was bedridden, I honestly didn't care that I lived in a small, dark room with a mat on the floor and a hot plate. As I started to feel like a semi-functional human again, I longed for a real home. I'd barely been able to find work for years and had almost no funds. However, my mind, pliant and awestruck from my recent healing, was wide open to being surprised. How great that almost no one was around to tell me how unrealistic this was, or to remind me of the astronomical San Francisco housing market. I was wholeheartedly and fully receptive to a miracle. Geez, I had just returned from the dead. I had nothing to lose. One day, I was on a short walk in my Richmond neighborhood. 3 blocks from my cave on Geary Street, I saw a sign, penthouse for rent. A tall, swarthy, genial-looking guy stood nearby. Want to come up and see? He asked, grinning. Well, I can't imagine how I could ever afford such a place, I laughed, but why not? You never know. Yes, he agreed, beaming. That's the one damn thing for sure in this life. You just never know. We went upstairs, and the place was astonishing. Not large, but floor-to-ceiling views of the Golden Gate Bridge and vaulted skylights, hardwood floors, vibrant energy. I don't even care what this costs, I sighed. Well, what are you paying right now? He asked. And here's what happened. While the apartment was supposed to be rented for a couple $1,000 a month, this angel gave it to me for just $200 more than I was paying for my hovel. He said, I'm from Syria. I grew up in the Damascus streets and learned by the age of 4 to read someone's character on the spot. It's a matter of life and death, you know? The minute you walked up, I knew 3 things. I could trust you, you'd been through a disaster, and I wanted you to live here. You were perfect. So that's how Divine Order brought my San Francisco penthouse for the next 3 years. The absolute right stretch of time I needed. Eventually, the building converted to condos, and I passed it on to a friend who bought it. Sometimes realism is terribly unrealistic.
What I love most about this story in particular is it's proof that when you are in a positive mindset and you're just open and you have that good energy, you connect with really, really cool, great people who you have no idea what will open up when you make those kinds of connections. If she'd been walking by and she'd had in her mind, oh, I can't afford that, and I'm worried about money, and I'm worried about the housing market.
Yeah, he would have never invited her up.
Her energy would have been so much different and so much more negative and critical. And
or even if he had invited her up, she would have been like, I can't afford a penthouse, and she would have refused to go up and see it.
Right. So her openness and her ability to just say, all right, let's
Why
just
the
see
hell
where
not?
this goes.
Yeah.
And to just allowed her to attract not only a fantastic apartment, but a person who really saw her for who she was and what she had gone through on the deepest level, even though it was just a chance encounter. I think that's so cool. So yes, this will lead you to amazing opportunities and jobs and houses and all of that. But it's a connection piece between us and other people who are in the same mindset and on the same wavelength. And that can be almost more important.
The reason I really liked it was that last sentence of realism is terribly unrealistic.
Oh, yeah.
So for all of us taking ourselves too seriously and assuming we know the answer and the outcome before we've even started, this should be hopefully a wake-up call that you should never assume that you know the answer. And it's like, just because you don't think there will be a parking spot in a prime location, why not at least drive by and look? I think it's assuming that we know the outcome before we've even seen it. That's preventing us from getting what we want sometimes.
Yeah, we
or
cut
from even
ourselves.
trying.
We cut ourselves off more than even the world cuts us off.
Yeah. Okay, last story.
Last story. Celestial clockwork. The other day, I was driving home when I hit what, in my small town, was an unusual major traffic jam. The Park Street Bridge had opened to let through a large ship at the same time the last of the rush hour traffic hit. A line of cars dragged for blocks with no escape route. I watched the people around me grow more and more agitated by the minute. I decided to just let go, take a deep breath, and inwardly say, my life is unfolding in divine timing. All delays are beneficial. I'm always at the right place at the right time. Growing up as a really impatient child, Mars conjunct Saturn and Sagittarius.
I have no idea what that means.
Of course,
but
we all know.
Obviously. Okay, continue.
This statement has really altered my life. So I turned up some Lady Gaga, wrote in my journal, and chilled. In about 20 minutes, I was on my way. When I got home, I saw the blessing. 4 squad cars and 2 ambulances packed my street. 20 minutes earlier, a drunk driver had skidded out of control in front of my building, bashing like a pinball into 7 different vehicles, one by one. Without the delay, I might have been right in the line of fire. My friend Tom told me a similar story that happened to him in reverse. He had taken his beloved boyfriend home to meet his family in Buffalo for the first time. All had gone reasonably well. Even his rather fundamentalist father was uncommonly gracious and kind. But the night before their scheduled departure, the dad suddenly went mad. He decided that the quote-unquote sinners could not be in his home a moment longer. They had to go. While his loving mom stood by apologizing and crying, Tom and his partner threw their luggage in the car in a frenzy, speeding out of town like a band on the run. It was, he reminisced tartly, quite the exciting little psychodrama. They decided to drive all night to get back to the enlightened world of Manhattan. Later that evening, they saw the cosmic handiwork. A freak blizzard had gathered from nowhere, hitting Buffalo 2 days early. The news showed cars abandoned by the side of the New York Thruway like empty carcasses buried under 3 feet of snow. The National Guard was called out. Emergency shelters were set up. If my dad hadn't gone stark raving ballistic, we would have been trapped. The storm front was precisely where we would have been driving. The universe expelled us at the perfect time. You just never know what blessings an obstacle or problem may be creating, and what larger nightmares you might be totally spared of.
And often you're never going to know. Those are really great examples of you actually learning it in hindsight or even right away. But sometimes you just have to trust that the delays or the obstacles are in your best interest, even if you don't know why.
Right. Sometimes you might be held up in random, unexpected traffic for a really good reason.
Never know.
And you may never see the proof of that, like Tosha did in that example. So I love that mantra that delays are always beneficial because we all hate delays. We're all impatient. We have to wait in line. We have to sit in traffic. Ugh, we hate it. And
there's an opportunity in every delay.
Yes. Right. There's very well could be a good reason for it that if you had the bigger picture, you might be really grateful for that delay.
Right. And so again, stop thinking you know everything.
Yep.
I know it's wrong for me to be in this traffic right now. How do you know? How could you possibly know that for sure? Why not assume that it's to your benefit, because at least then you get to be in a better mood and you get to just sort of relax. Otherwise, you're just stressed out and you're tense and you're beating your steering wheel. And how is that helping any of us? And again, that's creating more resistance.
It reminds me of a toddler who's playing in the front yard and they're just having a grand old time when they're playing and running all around like a crazy person. And their parent is like, get out of the street. Come on over here, out of the street. And they're like, you're being so lame. You know, they're just like having a temper tantrum. And then a car flies by out of nowhere.
Right.
And that could have been a terrible situation. And so the universe is like that parent being like, trust me on this. You don't want to be out in that street.
Right. And also, like, do you think you have the bigger picture? Or do you think the universe has the bigger picture? Like, which entities do you think can see further?
Right.
Do you think it's you? I need to find some... I don't know. I think I need to find some podcasts for psychopaths. Right? Because we've got some delusions of grandeur going on here.
Serious narcissism going on.
Okay. So I thought we would share a few stories of how we've done this. And I actually have thought of stories from years and years ago on purpose because I wanted to share a couple of stories from when I first started trying to do this. Because to me, it was so mind-blowing at the time that I thought maybe it would be more relatable if I picked ones from when this was new to me, as opposed to the ones that now I just feel like all the time. Mind-blowing stuff happens to me all the time. I don't even think it's mind-blowing anymore, you know?
Right. Mine are more recent, but that's because I just think they're funny and interesting.
Okay. So one of the things that she talks about in this book is asking for a sign. Particularly if you're not sure what kind of decision to make, or if you're like, I think I might be headed down the right road. So or the wrong road. Could you please stop me if I'm about to do the wrong thing? Or just really invoking the universe to send you some sort of a sign. If it's there to support you, you can just sort of ask for a little wink and just be receptive and don't be clinging to the outcome. Just trust that, okay, I'm going to ask for a sign and I'm going to let it go and I'm going to look at other things and focus on other things and just assume that I'll see it when it shows up. And I promise you won't have to pretend that you're seeing a sign, because if you're seeing a real sign, it will feel eerie or weird or hilariously uncoincidental to you. If you feel like you're making it up, you might be. So one of the first times we did this, Kristen and I went to a conference, and it was a very like spiritual, motivational speaker type of conference. And one of the speakers challenged all of us to ask for a sign. And so I decided I was going to ask my grandma, who died when I was 15, for a sign. And I said, I would like it to be something related to your trip to New Zealand that you took shortly before you died. I was like, I'm going to make this hard.
Real specific.
Real specific. And I don't think I'd ever asked for a sign before. And so I didn't expect it to work at all, which is probably what allowed me to let go.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't like, I just didn't expect to see anything. I was like, oh, well, fine. And then later that day, we go home from the conference, and it was probably, 8 hours later? It was that same night. I opened my email, and I have a random spam email. I mean, the email, I don't even know what it said. It was to the wrong person, or it was just spam. But it was from someone who had an Auckland University in New Zealand email account. And I was flabbergasted because, I live in Washington, D.C. We don't see references to New Zealand. I hadn't turned on the TV. No. It's not like we were listening to the radio. It
came to you in your inbox.
It literally was sent to me. Right. It wasn't like a car that I was driving next to. I mean, it was literally sent to me in my inbox. I was flabbergasted. Just totally flabbergasted.
Within hours. That was fast
Within hours. Yeah. Within hours. So I've had signs come almost instantaneously when I've asked before. But that one was one of my first, and so therefore one of my fondest memories.
I love it.
Yeah, that was cool.
Okay. I'm going to tell a slightly embarrassing and definitely funny one.
Okay.
That happened recently.
Okay.
So earlier this year, I was going on a trip, via plane. So I was packing for my trip, and I was driving with all my bags packed and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot the most important thing. So keep in mind, this was a trip where I was going to need to be sharing a bathroom with other people. And Rachel and I know you're a fan of this product too, Rachel.
Yeah.
One of our favorite products is Poo-Pourri.
Oh yeah, we don't travel without it because we don't want to stink up bathrooms, and we all poop, so we need it.
Right. And so if you don't know what poopery is, Google it. They have the best videos.
And it works.
It really works. And no matter what happens in the bathroom, you can leave it smelling like a freshly flowery meadow.
Yeah. It's the best.
And I was like, oh crap. Not
literally.
No pun intended. I forgot my poopery. I'm going to be sharing a bathroom. This whole long weekend.
Highly embarrassing.
This is not going to work. And so as I'm driving, I randomly, and I've driven this route multiple times, but I'm like, oh, there's a CVS there. I never even knew there was a CVS. I'm like, but this is such a weird specialized product. I always have to buy it online, like on a special store. This is not like a thing you just find
I've never
randomly.
Seen it sold in a store
But
before.
I just had this hunch. Just check out CVS. Just stop by. Maybe you'll find something similar. I don't know. You got to find something. And I walk in the CVS that I'd never noticed before, even though it's been there all along. And right in the front, when you first walk in, right next to the cash register, is this whole display of not only poopery, but travel-sized poopery that would fit on the plane. I was like, yes, thank you, universe.
So
there you have it. Even poopery is not too small.
That's the thing. Is like the universe is always there to nudge and to help and to support. And it doesn't matter if it's something as stupid as poopery or as important as a job. Like the universe finds it all equally easy. There's nothing harder about helping you manifest $50 than it is helping you attract $50,000 or $500,000. It really is about your receptivity, not the universe's ability. The universe can do anything.
And how possible you feel it is.
Yeah, right. And you were open. You were like, well, who knows? Maybe. And I also think you weren't attached to the outcome. You were like, well, maybe they'll have it at the airport or at some point, maybe I'll be able to buy it. You weren't worried about it. You were just like, oh, man.
I just had a hunch. I'll just check out here.
Okay. Right. Again, you followed your intuition and it led you straight to the poopery.
Straight to it.
Okay. So another thing, and I'll link to this. This is a book that maybe we'll do a bonus book club about this one day, but that won't be for a while. So if you want to read a great book that helps you, it's sort of like the practical component to what I think Tosha's is more spiritual. You know?
Yep.
Like her book is more spiritual. Pam Grout's book, E Squared, it's 9 energy experiments that you can do to prove that your thoughts create your reality.
I love this book because if you really want to believe, but you're just having a hard time wrapping your brain
you're
around
more skeptical and logical,
then this book is so good for that. You literally write out reports.
Yeah.
Like science experiment.
Yeah,
reports.
There's 9 different experiments. And so this was the very beginning when I was first really wanting to believe in this, but thinking this seems too good to be true. And now I just feel like it's so normal. It's like hard for me to relate to the fact that I ever thought this was weird. Cause to me, this is just how the universe works. And I feel like I've been initiated into a club, so to speak. But at that time I hadn't been. And one of the experiments is to pick a random color of car and then just see how often it shows up. And I decided to pick sky blue, which is not a very common car color. Like you see it sometimes. And so I'm driving to, at this point, this was 5 years ago. So I had a job and I was driving to it and I saw like 4 or 5 sky blue cars. And I was like, well, I mean, I was doing the logical thing.
That's
like
more than you would expect, but...
And like sometimes it was kind of like random. It was like it cut me off, or it wasn't like it was from far away. It was like, it seemed kind of obvious. But again, I was like, well, but that's what happens. Like you buy a new car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere because the part of your brain, the reticular formation that actually is designed to pay attention to things is now being primed to pay attention to this. And so I was logicking it, which is fine. But I pull up to work, and at work, I used to work at a law office and it was in downtown, like Old Town, like right across from the courthouse. So this office I worked in used to be a house. And so where I parked was basically a driveway, but there was street parking too. So sometimes people would park like in front of the driveway without realizing it and block us in. And then we'd have like a time getting out. So I pull into the street and I'm trying to pull into the driveway when I am literally stopped in my tracks because there is a sky blue SUV blocking the driveway and I cannot park because I'm being blocked.
I
So
love
once
it.
again, the universe will troll the shit out of you sometimes just to be like, haha, no, this is
didn't
real.
believe?
I'm here.
I'll show you.
Right, exactly. So I didn't believe. And so then I immediately got, and I knew it was real because as soon as I saw it, I started cracking up. It was just too ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Blatant.
I don't think I'd ever been blocked in before. And it just beggared belief that this was happening on this day. So again, little stuff. It doesn't have to be big monumental stuff. That at first, if you need like help practicing this or just asking for signs or asking for support, little stuff works really well to start with.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one more that I'm thinking of. So this was also on a trip. I guess I'm on a good energy when I'm traveling or something, and I'm more open.
Oh, you and I
know.
always make more money when we leave.
True.
When we stop. Again, you stop paying attention to it. You stop grasping for it. You stop being desperate for it, and you're not paying attention. And all of a sudden, the money can flow in.
Yep.
That's what I tell people. Take a break. Clean out your closet. Go do something fun. If you're waiting for something to happen and you're just kind of acting like a crazy person because you're desperate for something to work out, stop looking at that thing.
Yep.
Go do something else. And it's almost magical how often that works.
Yeah. Release the resistance.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. So I guess this was last month. I went to Dallas with my boyfriend. And one of the things that we like to do is walk around college campuses. Both school nerds, and I think they're beautiful. And so we happened to be next to SMU, that campus, which is stunning, beautiful campus. And we walked all around it. I mean, we probably walked 2 miles around that campus. And when we get back to the car, I realize I don't have my phone. My phone is gone. I must have had it in my pocket or in my purse or something, and it fell out. And I'm like, oh my God, we just walked for miles. I'm never going to find this phone on this entire campus. And I start freaking out because that's also, obviously it has a lot to do with my business. Like that's how I check a lot of things for business. And you know how we get about our phones. It's scary when you don't have it. And so he drives back and he's like, okay, you walk around this grassy area where we went at the beginning. I'll drive around and look at all the different sidewalks where we were. And I'm like, this is futile. We're never going to find my phone. And I'm just like freaked out. And I'm traveling without my phone now. And I don't like that. And I'm walking down this grassy thing, just convinced that this is the end. I'm going to have to get another phone and it's going to be so expensive. And I'm going to lose a bunch of stuff. And I just stopped for a minute and I breathed and I was like, this is going to be fine. If I have to get a new phone, whatever. If I find it, great. And I just decided to breathe and let go for a minute. I remembered the universe has my back. It's been working out for me my whole life. And literally 10 steps later, there's my phone. Face down, just like perfectly fine. And I just pick it up and I call him. I'm like, all right, let's go to the next thing now. So I swear it was because I had that moment of releasing it. I bet I could have walked right past it in my previous mindset and not seen it because I was so frantic and up in my head. And so I allowed myself to be open to finding it, and then bam, there it was.
So I think there's some themes I want to highlight to sum up this conversation. And one of them I didn't actually write down, but that has come to me as we've been talking, is that outrageous openness isn't a thing you use to manipulate the universe into giving you what you want. Because I've done that before. When I've been like, I remember years ago first reading this book and being like, oh, okay, the perfect partner is already selected. Great. I'm just going to say that every night. And then that will make me have like a boyfriend or whatever. And that didn't happen because my intention was not right. My intention was to try to get what I wanted. Outrageous openness.
It was still controlling.
Again, exactly. So outrageous openness is not about trying to get what the ego thinks it wants. It's about being willing to legitimately surrender what you think you want in favor of what the universe has to offer, because you really trust and believe that the universe has better solutions for you than you have for yourself. And it has to be legit and it has to be sincere. It can't be a manipulative tactic.
You have to genuinely let go of how your request or your issue is going to be resolved.
Yeah.
You can trust that it will be, and that it will be in a way that is pleasing to you. But your version of it, if you're so attached to, I need it to show up on this timeline and in this particular way, and it has to look like this, then you're not actually releasing that to a greater power. You're still trying to grip onto it and control, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. The how is none of your business.
Yep.
That's what one of our coach friends, Nancy, would always tell me. You know,
how it happens.
How it happens is none of your business. Yep. So just let go of that. Now, that also reminds me of, I think as we're talking about that, there's other themes that are arising that I want to get into. So a big thing that comes up over and over is nothing is too small or inconsequential for divine assistance. You can ask for help with anything and everything. So like, I coach clients all the time who they get good at asking for assistance or letting go when it comes to the big stuff. But with the small stuff, they forget that they can do this. So,
or it seems too small or silly.
Right. We can do this with parking spots. We can do this with literally anything we need support with, because the divine loves helping us. And again, everything is equal sized to the universe itself. So there is nothing too inconsequential or silly to ask for support with.
And I recommend starting with the smaller stuff, actually, because you can release your resistance more easily for the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
And get a really great result, and then use that to trust that the bigger stuff will also be as easy.
Okay, this is a thing that's coming up that isn't related to what we just said, but I just had a thought that I think people are going to be having, so I want to address this too. Does this mean that I don't have to do anything? Like, okay, say I want that girl who was like living like a cloistered nun, and then the cable girl came and they fell in love. Right. I mean, that's my dream, but that's never happened to me. Like a lumberjack hasn't exactly showed up at my door. I mean, I feel like I'm describing a porno. I don't have a lot of experience with pornos, so I'm guessing there are some like that, though. Like
lumberjack showing up.
You know, like the brawny paper towel man shows up or whatever. Yeah. The plumber, I don't know about that. I feel like that might be a step too far. But you know what I'm saying? That I think some people would be like, well, what is that? Is that just an excuse to sit on my couch and not like get out there or like put yourself out there? So how do we answer that question of what does this actually mean? Does this mean I don't have to do anything?
This does not mean that you're off the hook from doing anything, but it does mean that you will be guided to what to do, and it's up to you to follow and act on the guidance.
This has been very true for me. I mean, in every way.
Yes. So if you feel like you're really forcing something, like, oh, I have to move to Alaska if I want to get married. Well, okay, that's maybe not what we're talking about when we're talking about action. But if you feel compelled to talk to someone, or you feel compelled to go on a particular walk that you don't normally go on, or go a different route, those are the kind of impulses and intuitions that you are being asked to respond to and act on. Again, I'm going to reference Francisca's interview from a few weeks ago, because she did a really good job of, she was talking about being in the grocery store and having this strong impulse to talk to a woman who opened up all kinds of possibilities for her. And her job was to act on that impulse. It wasn't not to do anything. It was to wait until she felt called to do something and then act.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're waiting to feel called to do something, then that's a good opportunity to go do something else that's productive in your life. Maybe not around that particular issue, but that's why when I have clients who are sort of waiting for something to happen with a job, like they feel like they've done as much as they can, they've applied or they've networked a lot, and they feel like they're spinning their wheels and they don't know what else to do. I'm like, well, stop looking at this thing. Like, you can go be productive somewhere else. Go clean out your fridge. Go take your dogs for a walk. Visit a friend. Something that feels good to you, but that isn't about that. Be productive in some other way if you want. And then that kind of, again, releases resistance and often allows things to start percolating.
Right. If you're giving something attention, but you're giving it a lot of resistant attention, you'd be better served to just stop paying attention to it and go look at something else.
It reminds me of that. I literally don't know who said this. I think it's an old, maybe Mexican proverb that don't dig up in doubt what you planted in faith.
Yes.
It's like, it's like planting a seed and then going back and digging it up and being like shouting at it and saying, "Why aren't you growing?" It's like, Jesus, give it a tick. Right. Wait until like there is a divine timing to everything. And so if you're in your proverbial garden shouting at the dirt, which I do all the time, I'm terrible at this. I get it. Then it might be better to like maybe escort yourself out of the garden and go do something else to let the flowers just grow in their own time, you know?
Yep.
And you'll know when it's time because you'll be guided back to the garden when it's time to actually do something, harvest your fruits.
Which leads into a point we talked about it before, but I want to underscore it, which is that delays can sometimes be divinely orchestrated. Delays can very often be in your benefit. So it maybe needs time to grow.
Yeah.
If you harvested it too soon, it might make you sick.
Right. Well, it's like a baby. You don't want to harvest that baby at 7 months.
Right.
That baby needs 9 months. Right. That's how long a baby takes. And there's, your job, your relationship, whatever it is you want has a gestation period. You just don't know what it is.
Right.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
So, but right. Delays can be divinely orchestrated to save you from something or to save you trouble. And instead of raging against them, it's just better to assume that everything's happening in the right way in the right time and not assume that you should be mad because you don't like the result that you're getting.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think the main point here is that it's not your job to force things to happen.
Yes.
And when you can release that need to control the outcome and the process and all the moving pieces, you will have a lot less stress and a lot less anxiety, and you're going to get a lot better results because you are very limited in what you can do and in what you can make happen. The universe or God is unlimited. And so you're much better served to let the entity that's a lot better at this do its job. And you just follow the instructions.
Right. When you try to force things, you get not as great results, or you have to try so much harder, or you end up just kind of backfiring.
Or burnt out and exhausted. Because it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yep. So a couple more themes to wrap up. What's meant for you can't miss you.
Even if you move to Alaska.
Even if you... Yeah, right. So like another way to say that is there's no such thing as a wrong choice. Because even the wrong choice can maybe just be a divinely orchestrated sideshow that ends up directing you exactly where you're meant to be.
Yep.
So there's no wrong path. You'll end up where you're going regardless. You might make it a little longer and harder on yourself, which I feel I do on a daily basis. So I can relate. But I don't think that ever stops you from getting where you're supposed to go.
Yep. And probably the most pervasive theme of all of these stories that we chose is that the odds don't matter.
No, they don't matter at all. They're non-existent. They matter for you if you're doing it without God.
Exactly. Exactly. From a very limited human perspective, sure, they matter. But you have the divine on your side, which means...
You got a fast pass.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
You can skip the line.
You can skip the line on all the roller coaster rides you want to go on.
Yeah. It's basically you're just like in a different theme park.
Yeah.
You just go to a different theme park where there are no such things as lines. So, okay. We would love to hear your thoughts about this. We would really encourage you to read this book because it doesn't take long and it's really fun. You can read it piecemeal or all at once. Of course, I binged it every time I read it. I've just binged it from beginning to end, but that's me. And
I also want to hear your stories.
For
if you
sure.
have the kind of stories that we've been sharing personally.
You have to have one of those stories.
Or the kind of stories that Tosha was sharing. I love hearing those stories. And you sharing them emphasizes to yourself that, hey, the universe really is on my side. And anyone else who reads your story is going to be that much more willing to trust.
Convinced, hopefully.
So we hope you'll share them for your sake, for our sake, for anyone else's who's reading sake.
Okay. I will also link to episodes related to this because we have a few. The Alchemist episode, the one with Francisca, the one we did about the acorn and the oak tree. We talk about this a fair amount, but I will link to any that I feel are related so that if you haven't listened to those, you can kind of continue down this rabbit hole because it's a good rabbit hole to go down. And definitely. I want to, speaking of planting some seeds that will grow later, I want to just let you know that, and I don't know if this is the first time we'll have mentioned this, maybe, because I haven't, we're recording this weeks in advance.
We record these out of order too, so.
Yeah. So in a few weeks, the week of December 10th, for about 5 days, just that Monday through Friday, we're planning on doing a promotion, a holiday promotion of the Passion Profile short course, which is our intro course. And it's already pretty cheap. It's only $250, but we're going to give everybody an extra $50 off so that you can get it for $199 for like 5 days. And we also do payment plans. You can do one payment or 2 payments. So for those of you who really want to get started with a little bit of a kind of a nudge in the right direction, and you really like the Passion Profile quiz, and you want to figure out how to use your profile to chart your career direction and give you some clarity about where to look next and how to move forward, this is a really great way to do it.
I trust you all know your passion profile. If for some reason this is the first podcast of ours you've ever listened to and you don't know what we're talking about, please go to our website and take the passion profile quiz. We'll have a link in the episode description. And if you really resonate with your result, or if it's been a while, you could go retake it.
Yeah.
And if you're like, man, this really describes me, but I don't know what to do exactly with this, how do I combine this knowledge with finding a good career for me? That's what this course helps you do. It really is the best starting point for finding a career that you're passionate about, that combines some of your greatest values. And I think this is a great time to do this course right before the start of the new year.
You can do it in as little as one day.
Yeah.
That's the point. It's meant to be brief and able for you to do it easily without a ton of effort and time. So we will remind you more when it gets closer to, but you don't even have to do anything because
we'll
let you know and we'll email you.
Share it on the podcast. You'll know when it's time.
If you're not on our email list, all you have to do is take the Passion Profile quiz, and then you will get an email when you have to confirm to get your result, because we have to make sure you're not a robot. So you'll have to put your email address in there, and then we'll send you an email that asks if you want to get our emails and opt in. And so you just say, yeah, and that's how you get our emails. So okay, we will talk to you on Tuesday with a blog. I think it's going to be a retro blog from you.
I think that's right.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. I looked at it before we started this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Well then, see you on Tuesday with the blog.
Okay, bye.
Bye.